Good morning, friends. My name is Ben Johnson from St Mary's Anglican Church, and today we are beginning our new series, working our way through the New Testament letter of Galatians. Now, if you haven't already done so, hit pause on this video and maybe read through chapter 1, the first chapter in the letter to the Church of Galatia, or the letter of Galatians, because that is the chapter that we are focusing on for this morning. But if you've already read it, you would have met somebody called Paul. Paul is the person who is writing this letter to this church. And if you don't know much about Paul, Paul didn't exactly follow Jesus. In fact, Paul used to be the person who persecuted others who would follow Jesus. He would travel throughout the regions trying to find and detain these new Christians, and it was Paul's responsibility to hold the cloaks of the Jews as they threw stones at these Christians. And yet one day, as Paul was on the road to Damascus, he had an encounter with Jesus, and Jesus appeared to him on this road, and his life transformed. From then on, Paul travelled throughout the regions, preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, and started a whole lot of new churches. And it's the church in Galatia that he writes to now, after he had evangelized within the region, established this new church, travelled on in his missionary journey, and then writing back letters of encouragement and instruction in how to live a life that follows Jesus. These are relatively new believers that he's writing to, and they had some particular challenges. And the main challenge that we're going to find that these new Christians encountered was regarding some of the Christian Jews within the region. So what I mean by that is you've got, I guess, two groups of people. You've got those that used to be Jews, people like Paul, who have now converted to following Jesus Christ and living under this new way. And then you've also got those who were Gentiles, basically anyone who lived in the area that wasn't a Jew by their lineage through to the person of Abraham. They are Gentiles. And yet you've got this mixture now of those who now, they're all Christians, they all follow Jesus, and yet some of them used to be Jews and some of them used to be Gentiles, non-Jews. And now the issue that Paul speaks into here is that there are some of the Jewish Christians, those that used to be Jews and now follow Jesus. Maybe they still are Jews, but they also follow Jesus, telling the Gentile converts, these new believers, that not only must they follow Jesus, but they also must adhere to the Jewish law. And Paul writes into this situation, writes into this context, saying, no, do not place any extra stipulations on top of the grace of Christ. Now, if you're hearing a bird in the background, I apologize. I don't know what it's got going, but it's quite loud here. Anyway, Paul writes to these churches in Galatia, and he says to them, the grace that you have found in the person of Christ is sufficient. That is all that you need. You do not need to add anything else onto that. You do not need to get circumcised. You do not need to observe the food laws. You do not need to observe the customs and traditions of the Jewish culture and Jewish people. In fact, Paul says to them, any changes to the gospel, any changes to the truth that has been proclaimed, that has been preached to you, it actually reverses the gospel. It's not a matter of just a slight change and it's all okay. Paul says anything added, anything changed, anything subtracted to the gospel that has been proclaimed to you actually totally perverts the gospel. Now, what does this mean for us today? Well, we have all kinds of ways which we might add something onto the gospel. Maybe it's churches saying, you need to follow Jesus, you need to have a faith in Jesus, but you also need to believe these things. Faith in Jesus plus correct doctrine, belief about the Bible and in certain ways. Maybe it's churches which might say, you need to follow Jesus, you need to have a faith in Jesus, but you also need to be a certain type of person or love others in a certain way. You need to be a nice person. And if we can't see these traits within you, then we actually don't think that you're a true Christian. Maybe it's churches which say, you need to follow Jesus, you need to have a faith in Jesus, but you also need to observe particular customs or practices. Maybe it's food you eat, maybe it's how you dress, what clothes you wear, maybe it's the relationships you have and who you date, and they will be the telltale signs for us whether you are considered a believer, a true believer or not. And Paul writes into all of those situations and he says, no. All you need to do in order to have a right relationship with Jesus is to understand that you are saved by faith alone, that his life, death, and resurrection, his victory on the cross, is sufficient enough to bring you back into relationship. You do not need anything else. Some of those things are good things. Some of those things might be great things, but they do not contribute in any way to your salvation. And so, my friends, for us, we might rest assured as we enter into this new teaching series that we are reminded that our salvation is through the gift that Jesus gives alone, through his death and resurrection on the cross, and not through anything else that we might think that we can contribute. In fact, we can't contribute anything. And if we try to contribute anything, we actually distort the gospel and we nullify it. We pervert it in such a way that it has no meaning at all. Because the whole point and the whole beauty and the whole relevance and the whole truth is that we cannot bring anything ourselves, but that Jesus is enough. Jesus is enough. My friends, I hope you have a great week, and I look forward over the next 7 weeks as we work our way through the book of Galatians to exploring more of what it has in store for us as God's people at St. Mary's Anglican Church. Have a wonderful week, my friends, and I'll see you next Sunday. Thanks.